Casey Kasem. Radio plays them, Radio and Records ranks them, and we count them down on Casey's Top 40. Checking in at number 38, here's the third of our 5 debuts this week. It's by a singer and songwriter who co-wrote 2 Top 40 hits for Gloria Estefan last year. Can't Forget You and Coming Out of the Dark. Here's Jon Secada and Just Another Day.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to the first Top 40 hit for Jon Secada, a singer who belongs to a very exclusive club, a club of background singers who have stepped into the foreground. You know, there are a lot of important elements that go into a great record or a great live performance. And one of the most important and least recognized is the background singers. Most of the time, these unsung heroes never get their due. Ever hear of Rosemary Butler? Well, you've certainly heard her voice. She's sung background on thousands of records for artists like Linda Ronstadt, Jackson Browne, and James Taylor. But she's not what you'd call famous. On the other hand, some other people who have been background singers are very famous. Before these stars could shine, they had to find a way out of the background. And that's just what new artist Jon Secada did. Actually, Jon's not really new, just new to the front of the stage. You see, he's been singing background and writing songs for Gloria Estefan for 5 years. And that includes her last number 1, Coming Out of the Dark. And now Gloria's returned the favor. She's become one of Jon's biggest supporters. In fact, during her recent worldwide tour, she gave Jon his very own spot in the show, a rare privilege for a background singer. Not only that, Gloria did something else for Jon she'd never done for any other artist. She sang background herself on Jon's new single. This week, that single jumped 5 notches to number 33 on Casey's Top 40. Here's Jon Secada with Just Another Day.
Casey's Top 40.
This is Mark Elliott for Casey Kasem. Now, we're up to Just Another Day, a hit born when a couple of old friends accidentally bumped into each other. As we've said over the years, songwriters never know when a song is going to drop into their laps. In this case, the song began when Jon Secada ran into his old pal Miguel Morejon in Miami. They'd worked together with Emilio Estefan, leader of the Miami Sound Machine and husband of Gloria Estefan, when they were all starting out. But over the years, Miguel had gone off in his own direction. Like most reunions, Jon and Miguel had a lot of catching up to do. They went to a restaurant, sat down, and over a long, slow Cuban meal, they talked about the old days, remembering the crazy things they did on the road, the women they'd known, the nights they'd stayed up till dawn. Jon says, quote, "We were talking about past relationships and the philosophy of life. We gathered all these experiences and kept describing them with new lines and phrases." Jon began to write the words down on his napkin. Then he asked for a whole pile of napkins. He scribbled furiously. And by the time the check came, he had a song. It became the first demo he cut for his solo debut album. And it's become his first hit as well, an international top 10 smash. Here's Jon Secada with that song born when 2 old friends got together to reminisce.
Casey's Top 40.
From Hollywood, California, this is Casey Kasem. And standing pat at number 4 is a singer who recently headlined a big benefit concert in Hollywood, Florida. Over 60,000 people turned out and helped Jon Secada raise $120,000 for South Florida drug rehabilitation programs. Here's one of the songs Jon sang at that benefit, his second top 10 hit, Do You Believe in Us?
Number 8.
Here's a Cuban-born singer who was invited to the White House this past summer to be the only performer to welcome home the USA's gold medal-winning Olympic team. This is Jon Secada with one of the songs he sang for those great athletes, the biggest hit by a solo male in 1992, Just Another Day.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem, counting down the 40 biggest hits in the 50 states. Well, now we're up to the latest hit for Jon Secada, a Cuban-American singer-songwriter who says he once had no interest in music at all, until his friends made him feel like a loser because he didn't want to audition for a high school play. When Jon was growing up in Miami, music was the last thing on his mind. He thought he might become a lawyer or a doctor, helping newly arrived Cuban refugees adjust to life in the USA. But all that changed during his junior year at high school. One day his class decided to put on a production of the musical West Side Story. All of Jon's friends wanted to be in the show, but Jon says he couldn't have cared less. He wasn't interested in singing and he wasn't interested in dancing. But his buddies kept on insisting. They told him not to be a loser. And in the end, that peer pressure was so strong, Jon decided to put his pride in his pocket and audition. Jon didn't get a starring role in the musical, but he did get to play one of the gang members in West Side Story. And that experience changed his life. Jon found out he loved getting up on stage and singing and dancing, and soon he fell in love with performing. In a short time, all of his plans of being a doctor or a lawyer were put on hold, and Jon decided to devote his life to music. Last year, his first 2 singles went straight to the top 10, and now his 3rd hit is heading in that direction too. Climbing 7 notches to number 23 on Casey's Top 40, here's Jon Secada and Angel.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to the song If You Go. It's by a Cuban-born singer who says, I started with nothing. My family started with nothing. But these days, he says, he's living the American dream. Like many immigrants, he arrived in the USA with little more than the shirt on his back. And through a combination of talent and lots of hard work, he's made it to the top of the world. His parents worked in a cafeteria in Havana. They received permission to emigrate to the United States, and in 1972, they brought the whole family here. They settled in Hialeah, Florida, where they used the skills they learned in Cuba to land jobs in a restaurant. His parents saved the money they made working in the restaurants until they had enough to open their own restaurant. And they passed their work ethic on to their son. When he got into high school, he studied hard to get good marks. That got him into the University of Miami, where he earned a master's degree in jazz. And from there, he launched a career in music, starting as a backup singer for Gloria Estefan and then moving out on his own. Today, this son of once poor immigrants lives in a mansion in one of Miami's most exclusive neighborhoods. And he's become one of the hottest new singing stars around, thanks to smashes like Just Another Day, Angel, I'm Free, and the song that's this week's brand new number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart. The song that moves up a notch to number 9 here on Casey's Top 40. If You Go by Jon Secada.
Casey's biggest hits.
2 years ago this week, one of the biggest hits in the USA was by a star with a master's degree in music composition and theory, an education he says he tries to keep out of the way when he writes his songs. Jon Secada picked up his advanced degree at the University of Miami. It's a degree that involved hundreds of hours of study, analyzing what makes a particular piece of music work from a cerebral point of view. But Jon Secada says that as good as it is to know things like that, he knows that music has to come more from the heart than from the head. And so, to make his music, he puts his education on a shelf and looks into his soul for inspiration. 2 years ago this week, that inspiration led to one of the biggest hits in the USA. Here's Jon Secada with I'm Free.
Casey counts them down. Casey's Top 40.
Rolling in at number 88 is Jon Secada, a man who made his acting debut in 1995 playing the role of Danny Zuko in the Broadway revival of Grease. This is Jon Secada and a song from his million-selling CD, Heart, Soul, and a Voice, Metal Picture.
Casey's Countdown.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to a Casey's Countdown Extra. It's by a singer who was thrust into stardom when Gloria Estefan gave him 4 minutes alone in front of thousands of screaming fans. It happened in 1991 when this Cuban-American graduate of the University of Miami was singing backup on Gloria's Into the Light World Tour. The young man had graduated with a degree in jazz vocals and was trying to get his career started. Gloria thought that he had a great voice and a lot of potential, so she chose him to sing a duet with her at the show on her Spanish-language song, Oye Mi Canto. As the tour rolled on, Gloria and her husband, Emilio, felt a lot more confident about the young man singing. So they came up with a plan to give his career a bit of a push. The next night, as she usually did, Gloria invited the singer to step out of the background and join her singing Oye Mi Canto. Then, after just a few bars, Gloria stopped singing. And she said to the thousands of fans in the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce a new star, Jon Secada." Then Gloria stepped back and told Jon to sing the song solo for the next 4 minutes. Jon poured his heart into the performance, and when he was done, he got a standing ovation. Jon thanked Gloria for the opportunity, and she thought he did such a good job that she let him sing solo every night on her tour. Just a short time later, Jon landed a record contract, and he started scoring big hits like Just Another Day, Do You Believe in Us, and this hit from 1994. As a Casey's Countdown Extra, this is Jon Secada with his #1 smash, If You Go.
Casey's Top 40.
Well, now we're up to Jon Secada, a star who proposed marriage while one of his songs played. And that very same song was played at the wedding. It's a track from Jon's Spanish-language album, Amor, a song called Por Fin. This title translates as At Last, and the song took on a special meaning for Jon when he met the girl of his dreams, a woman named Marie-Thérèse Villar. Their romance began 2 years ago in the spring of 1995. Jon already had a successful recording career, and Marie-Thérèse was working as an assistant for Jon's manager, Emilio Estefan. Jon says as soon as he saw Marie-Thérèse, he fell head over heels in love. Last year, the couple took a trip together to Acapulco, Mexico. One night at a restaurant, Jon arranged for his song Por Fin to be played. And as it played softly through the restaurant speakers, Jon popped the question. Well, Marie-Thérèse said yes. And this past February 22nd, she and Jon tied the knot at the Church of the Little Flower in Coral Gables, Florida. They invited 400 of their closest friends and family, including Jon's best man, Emilio Estefan. And as they exchanged vows, once again, Jon arranged to have Por Fin playing in the background, a song he says brought the proposal full circle. After the wedding, Mr. and Mrs. Secada headed for Miami's Intercontinental Hotel to dance the night away. And now, less than 2 months later, Jon's singing right here on our survey, climbing 4 notches to number 23 on Casey's Top 40. Here's Jon Secada with Too Late, Too Soon.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to Jon Secada, a singing star who worked his way through high school and college cooking rice and beans and washing dishes. Jon Secada was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Jon's spoon was stainless steel, and it came from the small diner his parents ran in Hialeah, a blue-collar suburb just outside Miami. Jon's folks bought the diner with every penny they could raise after leaving Cuba for the USA. And like a lot of immigrants, every member of the family was expected to do his or her part to keep the business afloat. So all through high school and then into college, Jon spent every spare moment he had working in that diner. Before he went to school in the morning, he'd start the big pots of rice and beans that are at the heart of Cuban cooking. Then, after a full day at school, he'd head back to the diner to help with the evening cooking. Finally, he'd wash the dishes, clean up, and mop the floor before doing his homework and hitting the hay after midnight. Did Jon resent all this work? Of course not. It was all part of being a family. And when his parents retired a few years ago, he used some of the money he'd made as a singer-songwriter to buy them a new house. It was Jon's way of thanking them for everything they did for him while he was growing up. This week, the man so dedicated to his family has survey song number 30 on Casey's Top 40.
Casey's biggest hits.
4 years ago this week, one of the biggest hits in the USA was by a musician who writes all his songs in elementary school composition books, hundreds and hundreds of them. It's the way he says he's always written his songs. He uses those old-fashioned composition books with black and white covers and pages with really wide lines on them. He says he finds all that space very useful, especially for the many revisions he puts his songs through. He started writing songs that way back in his teens, and in the past decade, he's filled hundreds of composition books with his lyrics. So many that he has a virtual library of collected works. The collected works of Jon Secada. 4 years ago this week, Jon Secada had one of the biggest hits in the USA. Here's I'm Free.
You see what I see.
America's Top Hits.
8 years ago this week, back in 1992, one of the top hits in the USA was by a man who was happy singing backup for Gloria Estefan, until Gloria herself told him she should be doing backup for him. Jon Secada spent 3 years singing backup for Gloria on both her albums and on the road, and he quickly became one of her favorite singers. But one day Gloria pulled Jon aside and told him this wasn't what he should be doing for the rest of his life. Well, he says he thought he was being fired. But actually, what Gloria told him was that she wanted him to get material ready for a demo of his own that she'd produce and sing backup on. A demo that turned Jon Secada into a star and led to one of the top hits in the USA 8 years ago this week. Here's Jon Secada with Just Another Day.